This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Ahoy! Captain David Gallimore welcomes you aboard the Regenerate Show, live Mondays, 10 a.m. Pacific on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com. We dive into the real messy work of transforming our lives, leadership, and organizations. Bring your hot mess and confusion. Leave with clarity, courage, and confidence. Together, let's strengthen our resilience, accelerating the health of ourselves, people, planet, and profits. Now, here's your host, Captain Dave, your personal regenerator. All aboard!
Ahoy, and happy Monday. I'm so thrilled to be with you for episode 15 of the Regenerate Show. And I was just talking to our producer, Rebel, before we kicked off today about how challenging it is to live a regenerative life because we just get so busy with family activities and there's always another email or another meeting. So today's theme is going to be kind of an update since the April 6th solo conversation that I had with you. I think a lot has happened in the month, and I'm looking forward to just sharing a few insights, some tools that I've discovered, and let you know that the messy middle is right where you need to be, and don't do it alone. It's better as a team sport. So as those of you that have been with me a little while know, I define transformation as being or becoming who you want to become. And I'm riffing off of my colleague and hopefully, more as the time progresses, award-winning author Joe Pine, who's written Mass Customization, Authenticity, the Experience Economy. And then on February 3rd, he published The Transformation Economy, which I've been devouring and, week by week, just answering the questions that he has, not only in the book, but also in a transformation toolkit that I purchased. And so we'll talk a little bit about what's been going on with that, because I think having a roadmap when you're involved in personal and professional transformation can be very grounding, very, very helpful to me anyway. The other part of transformation, I think, is another Joe Pine nuance, which I'd love, which is what is the definition of flourishing? And Joe defines flourishing as becoming who you were meant to become. Now, that one's a little bit more challenging because sometimes, if you're anything like me, you grew up in a very busy household. I had two quite achieving parents. Love was often conditional on delivering good grades, delivering household chores, doing the things that my parents valued. And that was an era growing up in the 60s and 70s, and of two non-Americans, father British, mother Canadian, where, love was expressed differently. I never heard I love you, but I got a lot of love from the support and the attention and the resources and the adventures that we had as a family. So I felt love, but I just never kind of heard that expressed. And I, upon reflection, now at 64, realized that a lot of my motivation in achieving was seeking approval from my parents and then seeking approval from people in authority, people who had the wherewithal to make my life a lot easier or to make my life a lot more challenging. So part of the transformational process for me anyway, and perhaps for you, for those that are on this hero's journey of becoming who you want to become or flourishing to become who you were meant to become, is to really be curious and open about what might that look like. And if you've been on the show, heard me talk on the show before, you may remember Mathieu Graham, who was my kickoff guest. And he was such a brilliant support to rewiring my identity. Joe Pine talks about this as well, that any transformation requires changing our identity. So for me, identity was musician. I was a skier, sailor, pretty good at school, but not the smartest kid at school. I had to work a lot to get the results that I wanted. Loved getting certifications, really loved getting kudos and awards. Became a bit of an awards junkie in elementary and middle and high school. And that got pretty well beaten out of me by the time I got to college because I was now with published authors and researchers and people who were changing the world at 18 and 19 years old. So I was mightily humbled, and I had to shift my extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation and do what really lit me up. So in the last 4.5 years, going from the corporate crazy, as I like to call it, which is often very structured, right? You show up Monday morning, you get your coffee, you check email, you go to back-to-back meetings, you have quarterly reviews or monthly reviews, you have, every 6 to 12 month performance reviews. It's very structured. And that was a really helpful thing for me as a neurodiverse ADHD wired brain. So being a solopreneur the last 4.5 years has been incredibly challenging because I wake up and I don't have to report to anybody. Well, we all have to report to somebody. My boss, if you might call her that, who I love dearly, my soulmate, Margaret, she definitely will, if I don't have something that I've got in my day, she'll help me find something for my day. But a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom, and therefore the opportunity to maybe avoid and do things that feel fun and are easy, but not necessarily what are necessary and going to put food on the table or deal with some challenge like we all have throughout our lives. So since I last spoke with you a month ago, my wife, Margaret, and I, and our son, Ian, have been working very, very hard on preparing our home for sale. Now, there's probably a number of you that are listening, either live or when this gets released on your favorite podcast channel, to how fraught it is to prepare and sell a home. It's a bit of a faith-based position, isn't it? Like, you think you know what the value of your house is, but every house has its idiosyncrasies, it has its challenges. We didn't have an unlimited budget or unlimited time to prep the house for sale. We've been kind of working on and off for a year and a half. But now the decision to put the house on the market and be very exposed, frankly. So we set a price after looking at comparative homes. Ours built in 1974. It's a Tudor. It's on half an acre. It's got 6 bedrooms. It's a lovely piece of property overlooking the water with access to the water. We're water wannabes, I call it. If sea level rise continues, we'll have waterfront in 50 to 100 years. So we set a price, and we worked with Tamara, who's one of the top producers for John L. Scott in our area. And what I love about Tamara is she just takes control of the whole process and really just guides you and says, okay, you need to show up here. We're going to do photographs there. You need to make sure that the house sparkles. We decided to invite her to stage the house, which therefore we had to remove all of our belongings, simplify and make the home look like a prospective buyer would be most attracted to. So kind of seafaring theme, light, very light colors, making the room just look expansive and bright. But of course, even while we listed the house, there were still so many projects that were still in flight. And so what was fascinating about this, I'll just tell a little bit of a story about kind of getting those projects finished, and they're still in process, but how much resistance I had. And then after the break, we'll talk a little bit about, those kinds of big changes like selling your home or buying a home, and how exposed that feels. So it's really a big messy middle challenge and opportunity, but often very stressful for most people. So back to our story, we knew we had the utility room to finish. We had some exterior painting to finish. The weather had not been cooperating in getting all of the trim. We did get the roof pressure washed, which Margaret had been standing on my head for almost 9 years to do that. And she was right. It looked incredible when it was done. The fence project, so can you imagine a 6-foot high fence all the way around the perimeter of the property in various stages of decay and decline, and not really wanting to spend $30,000 to have a new fence, well, the old fence taken down and the new fence added. And so I said, I can do this. And oh my gosh, it was probably 4 weeks on and off between working on other house renovation projects, but also just life and running Regenerative World Group. So what seemed like it was going to take a weekend wound up taking a lot more time. And so we were finishing the fence and getting the fence painted, which, by the way, it came out really, really well. And just, project after project, just trying to stay focused on one thing at a time. and feel that sense of momentum and feel that sense of accomplishment. So now the house is on the market and there's a ton of interest. So we came on, just at the right time in the Seattle area, not too early, not too late, just right. Goldilocks, as I say, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, just right. And we had, hundreds and hundreds of views on social media, which apparently is a thing now when you're selling a house in the 2020s. We had a couple open houses and a lot of traffic. People loved what my wife, Margaret, had designed, really making the Tudor outside and the inside be congruent rather than a Frankenstein house. So those of you that are ever wanting to put your house on the market, biggest thing that I've learned from Margaret is you know what style of house you own, craftsman, mid-century modern, traditional Pacific Northwest in our region. And ours was a Tudor, a British Tudor. And so by being as congruent, as consistent with that architectural vibe, people walk into the house, they don't know why it feels so aligned and so comfortable and not jarring. That's why. So hot tip of the real estate, this is our 5th house that we renovated. Making the interior and the exterior style of the house congruent is a great way of adding more value. So people were coming in, but no offers. And we're going, what? We were hoping for a bidding war. The last house we sold 10 years ago on Mercer Island, we had multiple offers. We had priced it just below market, which we did on this house. But it didn't work that way. So the economy and all the uncertainty around inflation at that time in April into this month, interest rates have been fluctuating. They've recently come down. Yay! Makes it easier for the buyer to, get a maybe a more valuable house than they might otherwise afford because the interest rates are a little bit lower. So yeah, we were probably a couple days away from lowering the asking price, probably about 50,000. And voila, the weather turned better. The cherry blossoms were out on the cherry tree. The rhododendrons and azaleas were starting to pop, and it was the property was really sparkling. And we got a full priced offer. Yay us, right? What a relief. And then of course the adventure continues. So any of you have sold a house, you know that there's contingencies. And we had the typical contingencies of financing the closing. They'd already sold their home. The buyer had already sold their home. So they were waiting for the closing to occur. So that had to occur. An inspection. So home inspections these days are pretty detailed, and you, the seller, don't get the report. I think it's a law that was changed in Washington State to help sellers who, if they did get the full inspection report and the deal fell apart, now the seller's on the hook to disclose all of that in the Form 17, which is the statement of the good and the bad and the ugly of your home, including, critters or water egress or just stuff that happens, right? When you live in a home over time, you have to disclose all of that, or you should disclose all of that. Otherwise, you can really get into a lot of challenges legally and just morally, I think. So we had the inspector come. You're not allowed to be there. That was hard for me. And we, a couple days later, heard from their real estate agent that the buyer wanted a significant credit, like eye-popping, like fall off your chair sized request. And we thought, well, it's just Margaret and I. We weren't able to convince our family to kind of create a multi-generational living environment, which is what we were hoping might happen, hence the half an acre and 6 bedrooms. So that wasn't going to happen. We didn't need 3,800 square feet and half an acre and all of the maintenance, which largely fell on Margaret, and all of the expense, and of course taxes, and just getting contractors to come and the cost of materials. I mean, it's significant now to own a home. And I really feel for my son, Ian, and our daughter, Catherine, who we had to have help from my parents getting a down payment and then pay them back. But it's much harder for young people. And I really think that we older folks are doing a disservice to our young folks by making it harder to build new housing, more regulation, more environmental stuff, which as a regenerative person, I absolutely believe in. And yet we need to, I think, accommodate the next generation, allow them the same pride of ownership of a home. There's something magical about owning your own place. It's different than renting, very different. And we've done both. Much prefer owning. Sense of pride, sense of reason to get up in the morning if you got something to maintain or clean or fix or repair. So back to the story, and then we'll take a break. We were just about to meet them halfway. Thought that was fair and reasonable. The buyer wanted us to replace both driveways. They wanted us to replace the pool deck. They wanted us to do things well beyond just an inspection report. It was improvements. And we had specifically priced the home knowing that the driveways were, a little tired. They're near salt air, and salt and concrete are not a good combination. But we knew that, and that's why we priced the home at the price that we did. So the buyer's going to do what the buyer's going to do. And then before they could even receive our counter to the inspection report, they withdrew their offer. And what was surprising to both Margaret herself and then to me was that was not triggering. We said to each other, to ourselves, okay, wasn't meant to be. I probably would not have been able to do that, not get triggered even just a couple of years ago. So all of this transformational work, the inner work that I did with Mathieu and Bert and Catherine Baker and Chris Rue, my coach out of London, now Wales, it's really been working. So I invite you in your own transformation to just keep digging and letting go the frustrations that are inevitable in life. And if you get triggered, find a way to pause, breathe, think before just reacting, and instead choosing to respond. So long story short, or as Margaret would remind me, sorry, too late, David. The buyer came back less than 24 hours after withdrawing their offer because they had spent the day looking for a better house, and there wasn't one on the market. And this particular buyer was relocating and needed a place to live. And so they offered about $99,000 less, but waived the inspection report. And we said, absolutely, we'll take that deal. So now the next step in the process is the bank appraisal. And we know that the house is worth more than what the buyer has offered. So we're going to be just fine. And our view is that it's time to shed this boat anchor. We've been dragging this house around and all of the expense. So when we come back from the break, commercial break, just a short one, I'll be talking a little bit about some of the lessons learned and some other transformational insights for this 1 month update since I last spoke with you one-on-one.
You're listening to Regenerate with Captain Dave, your personal regenerator on K4HD Radio. We'll be right back. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you ready to regenerate and live the life of your dreams? Start the transformation now. Call Captain Dave at 253-237-2558. Stop overthinking. Again, call 253-237-2558 or go to regenerativeworldgroup.com to book a free, no-obligation clarity call. Let's get back to Regenerate right here on K4HD Radio for more life-changing transformations. Here's your host, Captain Dave, your personal regenerator.
Ahoy, and welcome back. If you're just now joining us, I did have a guest, but they had a conflict, and so it's just you and I talking about part two of my personal and professional transformation. And we've been focusing just the last few minutes on a hero's journey of prepping your home, our home, and selling our home, which is not yet complete, but we're very, very hopeful that everything will come to a close and the new buyer will take possession on June 1st. So as I mentioned before the break, we're awaiting now the bank appraisal, and we're pretty sure that the house is well appraised given how we've reduced or accepted an offer that's nearly $100,000 less, and we had priced it for less to try to get the bidding war. So we think we're in a good place, but you never know, and it's a bit nerve-wracking, I have to admit. So that will be Wednesday, and then after the appraisal, when it gets the check the box that we're all good, then we basically need to vacate, and there's just a couple more little things to do. I'm wanting to leave the home better than we certainly had found it when we bought it. And yet there will always be things that will need to be done. But I'm going to be focusing on the pool deck and making sure that the cracks and some of the issues that had come up in the inspection report are as safe as I can make them. And we'll be painting, making sure that the boathouse and the shop both sparkle, and the garage as well. So, my view is to leave the place as I would like to find it if I were the new buyer, so that all they have to do is turn the key and bring in their stuff and enjoy it as much as we have. We've added a 1-year home warranty, paid for the Supreme or Superior or whatever the level, because when we bought this house 10 years ago, the day that we took possession, the sewer grinder failed. So we're close enough to the water and we're kind of down a slope. So most of the homes in this area have what's called a sewer grinder, which purees the poop and vegetables and anything else that goes down the drain, and then pumps it up to the sewer line. And that failed, and that was a $3,300 expense that we were not at all planning. So yeah, having a home warranty, I think, will help the new buyer peace of mind, right? It'll cover the sewer grinder, it will cover the pool pumps, it will cover all the things that were not covered when we moved into our new home. And I'm also putting together an ops manual. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we've created what I call a smart home. So the water heater, for example, is internet enabled. Well, what does that mean? And the Ring camera system is obviously internet enabled. So how do we transfer that camera feed and all of the electronic stuff? We've got the whole pool is a process. When I didn't realize this when we first bought this house, but when you own a pool, it's a living, breathing entity, and you got to care for it and feed it the appropriate chemicals to balance the water so it's healthy and safe and doesn't spawn an algae bloom, which we've had one in 10 years, but yeah, thankfully only one. So all of this is ahead of us. And I would say that the spiritual growth, if you've ever bought or sold a house, it's to not get attached. Many of you have heard me talk about Michael A. Singer, the executive software founder, who also is a student of Buddhism and teaches and wrote 3 wonderful books, including The Surrender Experiment and Living Untethered. And that idea that you get attached at your detriment, if we had been attached to the offer from the buyer and then the buyer withdraws the offer, 1 minute you're on a high and the next minute you're not. You're really, oh my God, what's going on? Why did they do that? What did I do wrong? All of that kind of negative energy spinning me into the ground. And I've been there. Oh my gosh. So easily to get my self-worth that's attached to my outcomes in the past, and how difficult it is to let that go. So if you've been listening to the Regenerate show, it's about strengthening this muscle of not being detached. You care, but not that much. And obviously, if it's life and death, you're going to care a lot. But even that, I believe, I've adopted kind of a Stoic philosophy called memento mori, which is translated into English as remember death. Now that sounds really morbid, pun intended, but when you think about it, memento mori means, hey, this day that I have unfolding could be my last. How do I want to spend it? Do I want to be ruminating about an offer that went away? Or do I want to, put my energies into connecting with Margaret and our son Ian and our daughter Catherine, which is what we did. We just reached out to our family and we shared the news, and then we laughed about it and connected, and just, really wanted to put our attention, which is probably even more valuable than our time. We wanted to put our attention into those things that we could control. And if anybody knows the serenity prayer, to let the rest of it go. Not easy to do. I fully appreciate how hard it is to strengthen this muscle. So I'm here to tell you, I want to point to hope that if you are willing to do the inner work and discover your core values, discover your Ikigai, what are you talented at? What are you passionate about? What does the world need at this time? And being realistic about that. And what can you be well paid for? And I include well paid for to include not getting micromanaged, reasonable benefits, because we all know that healthcare, at least in this country, is a huge expense. Could be, credit toward child care, because that's another growing expense. So, wealth is not just the salary and the performance bonuses or the commission or whatever variable compensation, but it's that whole kind of wealth perspective. So those 4 circles are your Ikigai, your reason for being. And knowing that, plus the brand persona, my explorer brand persona, the maritime captain, armed with those, they can be incredibly helpful in being detached from outcomes, because you're grounded in who you are, independent of the house offer happening or the house offer going away. Or if you, like me, are a solopreneur, the client who says yes, or the prospective client who says no, thank you. Those used to really be triggering. And I would spiral down into a bad space. What did I do wrong? And am I not good enough? And blah, 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 blah. And so I want to point to hope that in this second part 2 of my messy middle of personal and professional transformation, that it's easy, it's simple, but it's not easy to do this work. And so now what I'd like to just pivot to in the remaining few minutes of the radio show is talk a little bit about how we're better together. So related to the home, we have Tamara, our real estate professional. We have Jimmy, who's an extraordinary painter. We have Osman and Juan, who were our finish carpenters. We had Puzzle Roofing, which did not only the pressure washing, but also the capstones that were deteriorating, got those repoured. And those are probably and Rodrigo, who's our weekly gardener. Those are probably the biggest contributors to the team. And Sam Shak Romanoff, our financial planner at Edward Jones, also an incredible resource for us, and his team of Vicky and Laura. So it takes a village. And I didn't realize, really how many people were going to help us. We thought maybe me, arrogant Dave, thought he could do a lot of it on his own. But there's some things that I could do, but I keep going over it and over it and over it again. My nemesis in terms of home renovating is to sheetrock, tape, mud, texture, and paint. I just keep going over the mud, over the seams, over and over again. Before you know it, they're not smooth. They're the opposite of smooth. So it takes a village. And that definitely translates into the business side of my professional transformation. I've got a dear coach out of Wales, Chris Rue. I've got my dear friend Bert Eckert in Belgium, Catherine Baker, and so many people that I've had on the Regenerate show that have really made a difference in my life. Matteo Graham, the original identity work that I did, rewiring my identity to detach from outcomes to feel whole and complete. So it definitely took a village to, improve my business results. And I was going over those business results with Chris, and we basically together, after I started working with him in 2025, we've increased the revenue of this business by 50%, greater than 50%. And it's been a slow ramp. But I'm here to tell you that I feel like I know a lot of what not to do, like getting spread too thin or trusting other people to try to market me or market and promote the offerings that I have. In the services business, we're basically in the trust business. And so it's vital that I am clear about the value that I can bring, not oversell it, but also not undersell it. And it takes a village to help get clear about that and then to take it to market. So in the coming weeks, once the dust has settled on the house, and I am able to focus much more on continuing to attract great clients, continuing to explore how to create even more value for you on the Regenerate show. And I certainly appreciate any likes and comments, constructive comments especially. And if you're willing to repost, I'd be really grateful for that. What I'm learning is focus is going to be my friend. And one of the things that I discovered, which I highly recommend, and let's see if I can do the magic of sharing. So I'm going to click here, share screen. And hit share. So we're going to have Marcus Bauer, who's the creator of Goalscape. And just to orient you, it's a very visual tool. So it starts out with a goal. And in this case, my Goalscape is my life. It's got the home you can see is 50% of the priorities. We're going to be moving to our cottage, so that's not yet. That's on pause. I'm still, actively working my business. Certainly actively day to day getting a little bit better with challenges in showing up consistently, doing the sales, doing the marketing, etc. This one comes from a book that I read about 5 regrets of the dying. And one of the regrets of people when they're in hospice and about ready to pass is that they didn't invest time in the relationships that mattered. So this is something that I'm going to be focusing on more and more upon the sale of the house. And then finally, health span equaling lifespan. And my mom, who will be 96 on July 1st of this year, who is in hospice, she's a terrific role model of where her health span and her lifespan, up until I would say the last couple years, have really. She's a terrific role model, eating, nutritious whole foods. She was a lifelong gardener and really enjoyed being out in nature. So as the home starts to wind down, guess what? I just slide this, and so now it becomes nothing. And then these pie slices start to take over that time. And so this one will probably take a little bit more. I'll probably just minimize this one a little bit and continuing to invest in my health and in relationships, including heading up to Wrangell, Alaska to be with our granddaughter Daisy and our future grandson, who's not yet named. Now, with each of these, I'll just click on the sale of the house just to let you know how the power of this. Let's see here, if I can click on the right one. There we go. So if I double click on sell the home, it brings up finish prep for sale projects. It's got organizing and removing the garage, organizing and removing the shop. Here we are, bank appraisal. I should probably make that a little bit bigger. So this is showing the prioritization relative to everything else that's going on. And if I double click on this one, it's going to show you these are things that I'm working on. These are things that are on pause. And here are some of the things that we've completed. If I click on the fence, anything in blue has been completed. And so what I really love about what Marcus has done, he's created a visualization of something that matters, a goal that matters, and then links the actions to that goal. And equally importantly, because you're able to just literally, I'm basically done with the 3 gates, right? So I can just make that one kind of the rest of the size. It's in a nanosecond, you can shift your priority and see it and see and ask the question, well, where am I going to de-emphasize things? So again, once the home is sold, then what's the next priority? So my neurodiverse ADHD brain is time optimistic. I think I can do 12 pounds of stuff in an 8-pound bag, 12 hours of work in an 8-hour day. And it winds up being more like 36 hours of work, which is no way going to fit into an 8-hour day. So this is, I've been using Goalscape now for several months. I really like it. I highly recommend it. I've shared it with all my clients. Many of them are also exploring this for their use. So instead of having, dozens and dozens of different tools to manage your attention and your time, including your calendar, all the email things that you get, task lists, both digital and handwritten, I'm here to say that this has been a game changer for me. And what's really cool is I can connect this to Claude. There's what's called a API, application program interface. It's using what's called MCP, which, sorry, I used to know what that stood for, but I don't anymore. But it's a native integration between Claude, Anthropic's Claude, and Goalscape. So now I can have a conversation with Claude and I can say, hey, will you please build a Goalscape? I was showing Chris Rue earlier. He is wanting to redecorate their home. And so we just put that goal, redecoration of core of house. And then we clicked on a little button that says generate the pie slices. And probably within 10 seconds or less, it had created, defined the redecoration vision and plan. And then it broke that down into sub tasks, all within like 10 seconds. Now he's going to take this and he's going to refine it, and he can add new goals. And then he can change the pie slices and things. So I just invite those of you that struggle with visibility, the visualization of all that you have on your plate, to give this a shot. I found it to be incredibly, incredibly valuable. So many of you know that the Regenerate Show is all about sharing vulnerable and authentic stories of the messy middle of transformation. We know that transformation is not for the faint of heart. It requires clarity. It requires a village of support, because we don't get there on our own. And I hope that this update really showed you that it is possible to work through the inner work, and that the outcomes that are now showing up in my life as a result of the inner work, rather than forcing and self-discipline and all of the things that I have done in my past, seeking the approval of others, not necessarily speaking truth to power directly. I would be more through the side door. Some might say being more political. But I'm here to tell you that it is so freeing if you can do the inner work, and then you can rely less on self-discipline, because you're aligned more with your Ikigai, you're aligned with your core values, and you have a support network to help you when you don't want to do it. You feel overwhelmed. There's too many problems or too many challenges, which that's life, right? It's an up and it's a down. Just before you think it can't get any better, it does, but then it starts to get worse. And then just before you think it can't get any worse, and it does, and then it gets better. And being able to care about outcomes, care about people, but not be attached. That detachment has been so freeing and has given me so much more inner peace. And at the end of the day, inner peace and flow, that feeling of flow, that time just passes because you're doing what you love, and you're doing it with people who also love what you do. Not that it's without conflict, because diversity, I think, is so important. Diversity of opinion, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of ethnicity and age and gender, sexual orientation, all of that diversity, just like in nature. Nature, if you go into a forest, the strength of the forest is the nature, is the diversity of the trees and the different kinds of trees and the shrubbery and all of that. So in closing, Rebel's giving me the countdown. I love that. Hopefully we had fun today. I know I did, just being able to share a few insights. I hope that you feel inspired, that you're not alone in your transformation, and that you feel empowered. I've given you hopefully some things to consider and to also try this Goalscape tool that I highly recommend. So on behalf of our entire Talk4 Media team, I invite you to stay healthy, stay safe. We need you. Consider reviewing, one idea that came from this particular show today on personal and professional transformation, part 2. And, the next guest I'm really excited to have me here is Naveed Shah. And the episode theme is going to be being, living our essence. He is a Dubai-based leader whom I met a couple years ago, and he's a coach, and he's going to explore with me ancient wisdom encoded in Rumi's insight that your essence is your kingdom. So I know your investment of time will be well spent. We're better together. Stay healthy, stay safe. We need you.
Thank you for listening to Regenerate with Captain Dave on K4HD Radio. We invite you to give yourself grace and embrace the messy middle. See you every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Until then, you got this.